Rain tapped gently against the windows of the Grand Plaza Hotel's charity gala, but inside, the atmosphere sparkled with champagne glasses and designer dresses. Among the guests stood Lily, a young interior designer who normally spent her days choosing color palettes and furniture for clients. Tonight, she felt a bit out of place among the city's elite, having been invited only because she'd recently redesigned a popular restaurant downtown. "These sculptures are quite something, aren't they?" a deep voice said beside her. Lily turned to find herself face to face with Alexander Thompson, whose name she'd seen countless times in business magazines. He was the real estate developer everyone talked about, known for transforming old buildings into luxury properties. "Actually," Lily replied, surprising herself with her confidence, "they're replicas of ancient Greek pieces. I recognize them from my art history classes." She noticed how his eyes lit up with genuine interest, not the polite boredom she'd seen on most faces that evening. What started as a simple conversation about art turned into hours of talking. Alexander wasn't at all what the magazines portrayed. He laughed at her jokes about terrible design trends and shared stories about his first job as a coffee shop waiter. When he mentioned his love for old black and white movies, Lily couldn't help but smile. She'd found someone who shared her passion for classic films. Their first date happened 3 days later at a small Italian restaurant tucked away in a quiet neighborhood. Alexander chose it because Lily had mentioned loving authentic pasta. He listened intently as she talked about growing up in a family where money was always tight, but creativity and love flowed freely. Her mom had taught her to sew curtains and refinish furniture, sparking her love for interior design. Over the next few months, their worlds merged in unexpected ways. Alexander would surprise her at her tiny office with lunch, sitting cross-legged on her floor amid fabric samples and blueprints. Lily showed him how to bargain at flea markets, and they spent weekends hunting for vintage treasures. He called these their treasure hunting expeditions, and his excited grin whenever they found something special made her heart flutter. Their different backgrounds sometimes created funny moments, like when Lily accidentally used the wrong fork at a fancy business dinner, and Alexander smoothly knocked over his own water glass to draw attention away from her. Or when she taught him how to use public transportation for the first time, and he stood fascinated by the simple act of swiping a Metro card. "You make me see the world differently," he told her one evening as they walked through the park, sharing a street vendor's hot chocolate. "Before you, I was just collecting things, properties, cars, artwork. But you've taught me to see the stories behind everything." The proposal came 6 months after they met, during what Lily thought was just another treasure-hunting Saturday. They were exploring an old bookstore when Alexander led her to a shelf where a special edition of her favorite classic movie sat waiting. Inside, instead of a DVD, she found a stunning vintage ring and Alexander on one knee. Their engagement made headlines in the business world. Some society magazines couldn't resist pointing out their different backgrounds, but neither Lily nor Alexander cared. They were too busy planning their future, picking out their dream home, a surprising choice, a cozy brownstone rather than a massive mansion, and merging their different tastes into something uniquely theirs. Wedding preparations became their new adventure. Lily put her design skills to work, creating a celebration that would blend elegance with warmth. Alexander loved watching her in her element, often saying she was painting their love story into every detail. They chose the Plaza Hotel not because it was prestigious, but because it was where they first met. Their families bonded during this time too. Lily's parents, though initially intimidated by Alexander's wealth, soon discovered he was just as comfortable eating her mom's home-cooked meals as he was at five-star restaurants. Alexander's family welcomed Lily with open arms, his grandmother especially fond of teaching her old family recipes. The night before their wedding, they sat on the balcony of their brownstone, sharing dreams about their future. "I want to build something meaningful with you," Alexander said, holding her close. "Not just buildings or beautiful rooms, but a life filled with love and purpose." Little did Lily know that these words, spoken under a sky full of stars, would soon take on a very different meaning. The next day would change everything, testing her strength in ways she never imagined. But for now, she was simply a bride-to-be, falling asleep in the arms of the man she loved, dreaming of their tomorrow. The morning of the wedding dawned bright and clear. Lily stood in her bridal suite at the Plaza Hotel, surrounded by the gentle rustle of silk and the sweet scent of roses. Her mother dabbed at happy tears while adjusting the delicate lace veil, a family heirloom worn by 3 generations of brides before her. "You look like an angel," her best friend whispered, helping to smooth the train of her dress, a gorgeous creation that balanced elegance with simplicity just like Lily herself. The room buzzed with excited energy as bridesmaids fluttered about, fixing their hair and sharing childhood memories. Downstairs, the grand ballroom had been transformed into something magical. Lily's design background shone through in every detail, from the soft glow of vintage chandeliers to the carefully arranged wildflowers that made even the most elaborate centerpieces feel wonderfully personal. 300 guests were beginning to arrive, filling the space with anticipation. "Has anyone heard from Alexander?" one of the bridesmaids asked casually, checking her phone. "He's probably stuck in traffic," another replied, but Lily felt an unfamiliar flutter of worry in her stomach. Alexander was always punctual, taking pride in never keeping anyone waiting. The minutes ticked by. 30 minutes until the ceremony. Then 20. Lily's father paced outside the bridal suite, his polished shoes making soft sounds against the carpet. The wedding planner's smile became increasingly strained as she made hushed phone calls in the corner. "Let me check his room," Lily's best friend offered, squeezing her hand before hurrying down the hall. The weight of 300 waiting guests seemed to press against the walls. Lily stood perfectly still, afraid that if she moved, the perfect dream would shatter. Her friend returned 10 minutes later, her face pale. In her hands, she held a cream-colored envelope. "This was on his bed," she said softly. Lily's hands trembled as she opened it, the paper feeling impossibly heavy. "I can't go through with this," the note read in Alexander's familiar handwriting. "Our worlds are too different. I thought love would be enough, but I'm not ready for what this means. I'm sorry. Please forgive me." The words blurred as tears filled Lily's eyes. Outside, she could hear the murmur of guests, the soft strains of the string quartet warming up. Her mother reached for her, but Lily stepped back, needing space to breathe. The next hour passed in a blur of whispers and tears. The wedding planner, professional until the end, began the impossible task of informing guests. Lily sat in her beautiful dress, surrounded by flowers that suddenly seemed to mock her with their perfection. News spread quickly through the hotel. Phones buzzed with messages and calls. Someone from a fashion magazine who'd been invited to cover the society wedding was already typing furiously on their phone. By evening, it would be all over social media, the Millionaire developer who left his bride at the altar. But in that moment, Lily wasn't thinking about headlines or gossip. She was remembering little things, the way Alexander's eyes crinkled when he laughed, how he'd named every pigeon in the park near their brownstone, the sound of his keys dropping in the bowl by their front door. How could someone who'd felt so real suddenly turn into nothing but words on paper? Her family rallied around her. Her father, a quiet man who rarely showed strong emotion, spoke firmly with the hotel staff, shielding her from curious eyes. Her mother packed up the bridal suite, carefully folding the dress that would never walk down the aisle. Friends formed a protective circle, their anger on her behalf mixing with stunned disbelief. That evening, instead of celebrating at a reception, Lily sat in her childhood bedroom. She'd changed into old pajamas, her carefully styled hair now loose around her shoulders. On her phone, messages poured in, sympathy from friends, questions from reporters, and silence from the one number she hoped would call. "You're stronger than this," her mother said, bringing her favorite comfort food. Grilled cheese sandwiches cut into triangles, just like when she was little. "This isn't the end of your story, sweetheart. It's just a chapter you didn't expect." Lily barely touched the food, but she held on to those words. Outside her window, the city continued its normal rhythm. Cars honking, people laughing, life moving forward. She thought about her design studio, her clients, her dreams that had nothing to do with Alexander. They were still there waiting for her. As night fell, she made a decision. Tomorrow, she would face the world with her head held high. She would return to work, focus on her projects, and rebuild her life brick by brick, just like she'd taught Alexander to do with those old buildings he loved so much. What she didn't know then, as she finally drifted off to sleep, was that life had an even bigger surprise waiting for her. The next few weeks would bring news that would change everything. But for now, she slept, her dreams slowly replacing happily ever after with something stronger: the determination to write her own story. 2 weeks after the wedding that never was, Lily sat in a small doctor's office, staring at the plain white walls. She'd been feeling unwell for days, blaming it on stress and heartbreak. But her mother, worried about her constant fatigue and morning sickness, had insisted she see a doctor. "Aren't you sure?" Lily asked, her voice barely a whisper as the doctor shared the news. Not only was she pregnant, but the ultrasound showed something completely unexpected. The doctor pointed at the screen, moving the wand carefully across Lily's stomach. 1, 2, 3, and yes, there's the fourth, the doctor said gently. "You're carrying quadruplets." The room seemed to spin. Lily gripped the examination table, her knuckles turning white. 4 babies. 4 tiny lives growing inside her, each one a piece of the future she'd thought was lost forever. "This is a high-risk pregnancy," the doctor explained, her voice kind but serious. "You'll need regular checkups, proper nutrition, and lots of rest. Do you have a support system?" Lily thought about her family, about her small but successful design business, about the life she'd started rebuilding. "Yes," she answered firmly. "I have people who love me." That evening, sitting in her parents' kitchen, Lily shared the news. Her mother dropped the spoon she was holding, and her father's newspaper crumpled in his hands. But their shock quickly turned to determination. "We'll convert the guest room into a nursery," her mother said, already making plans. "Your cousin works at that baby furniture store. We'll get everything at cost." Her father, a man of few words, simply stood up and hugged her. "My brave girl," he whispered. "We've got you." As the weeks passed, Lily's body began to change. Her design studio became a haven. She threw herself into work, taking on projects she could manage from her desk as her pregnancy progressed. Her clients, far from being put off by her situation, became an unexpected support system. "My sister had twins," one client shared, bringing her a stack of parenting books. These helped her stay sane. Another client, a grandmother of 3, taught her to knit tiny hats while they discussed color schemes for a renovation project. The media tried to dig into her story, especially when her pregnancy began to show. Speculation about Alexander ran wild. Where was he? Had he known? But Lily maintained her silence, protecting her peace and her babies. She transformed her small apartment into a cozy nest, planning every detail with the same care she gave her design projects. The nursery became her masterpiece: soft colors, practical storage, and enough space for 4 cribs. Her friends threw her a baby shower, and the room filled with tiny clothes and endless diapers. The pregnancy wasn't easy. Some days she could barely move, her body struggling to carry 4 growing babies. Other days she felt like she could conquer the world. Her doctor monitored her closely, amazed by her strength and determination. "Most women carrying quadruplets have to stop working much earlier," the doctor commented during one checkup. "But you're handling this remarkably well." Lily had her moments of doubt, usually late at night when the babies were especially active. She'd place her hands on her growing belly, feeling their movements, and wonder about their future. Would they ask about their father? Would they have his eyes, his laugh? But then she'd remember something her grandmother used to say: "Life doesn't give you what you can't handle." Looking at the ultrasound pictures on her fridge, 4 tiny profiles, 4 beating hearts, she knew she could do this. Her business partners stepped up, taking on more responsibilities as her due date approached. Her small design team worked from her apartment when she was put on bed rest, spreading fabric samples across her bed and showing her client presentations on a laptop. "We're not just planning for 1 baby or even twins," her doctor explained during her 7th-month checkup. "Quadruplets often come early. We need to be prepared." Lily started packing her hospital bag, adding little things that would make the sterile hospital room feel more like home: her favorite blanket, some family photos, and a small stuffed animal for each baby. Her mother moved in temporarily, cooking healthy meals and making sure she rested. As her due date grew closer, Lily felt a strange sense of peace. Yes, this wasn't the life she planned. Yes, raising 4 babies alone would be challenging. But somehow, the universe had given her an unexpected gift: not just 1 miracle, but 4. What she didn't know then, as she folded tiny onesies and organized diapers by size, was that her story was far from over. The biggest surprises were still to come. But for now, she focused on the sound of 4 strong heartbeats during her checkups, each one a reminder that sometimes life's greatest blessings come disguised as its biggest challenges. Her last thought each night, as she drifted off to sleep surrounded by pregnancy pillows, was not of the man who left, but of the 4 little ones who would soon arrive. They were her future now, and that future, though different from what she imagined, was filled with more love than she'd ever dreamed possible. 5 years passed like a whirlwind of tiny footsteps and endless laughter. Lily watched her quadruplets grow from tiny bundles in the NICU to energetic preschoolers, each with their own personality shining through. 3 girls and 1 boy, all with curly hair and bright eyes that sometimes made her heart catch when she saw hints of their father in their smiles. After the babies were born, Lily made a bold decision. She packed up their life and moved to Boston, where an old college friend had offered her a partnership in a growing interior design firm. New city, new start, she told her parents, who eventually followed her there, unable to bear being far from their grandchildren. Her tiny apartment became a wonderland of creativity and chaos. The living room doubled as a playroom, with educational toys cleverly disguised as decor. She learned to work with one hand while holding a baby with the other, often conducting client meetings with a sleeping child in a sling across her chest. "How do you do it all?" clients would ask, amazed at her ability to juggle 4 toddlers and a thriving business. The truth was, she'd built a life that worked for them all. Her design firm specialized in family-friendly luxury spaces, a niche that grew from her own experience of making beautiful rooms practical for little hands. The quadruplets became local celebrities in their neighborhood. People smiled at the sight of their 4-seat stroller, which Lily had custom designed when she couldn't find one that met their needs. Each child wore a different color. It started as a way to tell them apart as babies, but became their signature style. Morning routines were like choreographing a small ballet. Lily developed systems for everything: color-coded cups, organized activity stations, and a massive wall calendar that kept their lives running smoothly. The kids learned responsibility early, each having small tasks they could manage. Mommy's little helpers, she called them, watching with pride as they put their shoes in their designated spots or helped sort laundry into color piles. They worked as a team, something she taught them from the start. Her design business flourished, partly because clients were impressed by how she transformed her own home. "If you can make a space work for 4-5-year-olds, you can make it work for anyone," became her unofficial slogan. She specialized in hidden storage solutions and durable but beautiful materials, lessons learned from her own experience. The children's preschool teachers adored them. "They're so close," one teacher remarked during a parent conference. "They look out for each other in a way that's beautiful to watch." Lily knew what she meant. If one was sad, the others instinctively gathered around. They had their own language of gestures and looks, a bond that went beyond words. Weekends were their special time. They'd visit parks, museums, and libraries, Lily turning each outing into an adventure. She taught them about colors and shapes through the architecture they saw, making their world a living classroom. Her design eye helped them see beauty in everyday things: the pattern of leaves on the sidewalk, the way sunlight painted shadows on buildings. Sometimes, late at night after the kids were asleep, Lily would sit in her home office looking at photos of their father in old magazines or business news. Not out of longing, but to prepare for the questions she knew would come. She kept a box of memories, newspaper clippings, photos, his note, safely stored away for when the children were old enough to ask about their history. Her parents were her rocks, helping with childcare when work demanded late nights or weekend installations. Her mother taught the kids to bake, creating happy chaos in the kitchen with 4 little pairs of hands covered in flour. Her father became the storyteller, inventing tales where 4 young heroes always saved the day. The design community in Boston embraced her unique perspective. She spoke at conferences about creating homes that could grow with families, sharing her personal insights about making spaces both beautiful and functional. Her firm became known for their family-friendly luxury designs, attracting clients from across the country. Life wasn't perfect. There were tough days when all 4 kids seemed to melt down at once, or when the logistics of raising quadruplets alone felt overwhelming. But Lily had built a support system that worked. Her neighbors pitched in during emergencies. Other parents from preschool traded childcare duties, and her business partner understood when she needed to adjust her schedule for her children. What amazed people most wasn't just that she managed it all, but that she did it with grace and joy. The love between her and her children was visible in every interaction, every rushed morning, every bedtime story session where all four squeezed onto her lap. "You're their hero," her mother told her one evening, watching Lily orchestrate dinner, homework, and bath time with practiced ease. But Lily knew the truth. These four little people were her heroes. They had given her a purpose and joy she never expected, turning what could have been a tragedy into her greatest blessing. As she tucked them into bed each night, kissing each forehead and whispering, "I love you" 4 times, she felt complete. Their family might not look like others, but it was perfect in its own way. What she didn't know was that their peaceful world was about to face its biggest challenge yet, when a chance encounter would bring the past rushing back into their carefully built new life. It was a regular Tuesday evening when the past caught up with Lily. She had brought her 4 children to a popular restaurant in New York City where she was overseeing a major design project. The kids were excited about their first business trip with Mom, bouncing in their seats as they colored their children's menus. "Remember our restaurant rules?" Lily reminded them gently, helping the youngest with her napkin. They nodded seriously. They were well behaved in public, something she'd worked hard to instill. The waiter had just brought their drinks when she felt it, that familiar sensation of being watched. She looked up and there he was, Alexander, standing frozen by the restaurant's entrance, his eyes fixed on their table. He looked older, a touch of gray at his temples, but still unmistakably the man who had left her at the altar 5 years ago. His expression shifted from confusion to shock as his gaze moved from one child to another, taking in their familiar features. The children, unaware of the tension, continued their cheerful chatter. One was showing off her latest drawing, another was carefully arranging her fork and spoon just like Mommy had taught her, while the 2 others played a quiet game of tic-tac-toe on their paper placemats. "Look, that man is staring at us," one of the girls said innocently, waving at Alexander with a crayon-stained hand. Her siblings joined in, all 4 now smiling and waving at the stranger who couldn't take his eyes off them. They were friendly by nature, used to people being drawn to their matching faces and synchronized movements. Lily's heart raced, but years of handling 4 children had taught her to stay calm in any situation. She watched as Alexander took an uncertain step toward their table, then another. The restaurant seemed to fade away, the busy dinner crowd becoming a blur of background noise. "Hi," he said softly, his voice shaky. I didn't expect." "Neither did I," Lily replied evenly, her hand protectively resting near her children. The kids looked between the adults with curious eyes, sensing something important was happening but not understanding what. "Are these?" Alexander couldn't finish the sentence, his eyes moving from one child to another, noting the familiar shape of their eyes, the curve of their smiles, all eerily similar to his own. "These are my children," Lily said firmly. "We're here on a business trip. I'm designing the new Thompson Hotel downtown." The children, picking up on the strange atmosphere, huddled closer to their mother. One of them tugged at Lily's sleeve, whispering loudly, "Mommy, who is that?" Before she could answer, Alexander spoke again, his voice barely audible. "They're 5, aren't they?" It wasn't really a question. He was doing the math in his head, his face growing paler by the second. "Yes," Lily answered simply. She had imagined this moment countless times over the years, but nothing had prepared her for the reality of it. The way her children's eyes darted between her and this stranger, the way Alexander's hands trembled as he gripped the back of an empty chair. "Why didn't you?" he started, but Lily cut him off with a look. This wasn't the time or place. Her children were watching, and their peace of mind was her priority. "We're about to have dinner," she said politely but firmly. "The children need their routine." Alexander nodded automatically, still staring at the kids. One of the boys had his exact nose, while the girls shared his dimpled smile. It was like looking at photographs from his own childhood, multiplied by 4. Can we talk?" he asked, finally tearing his eyes away from the children to look at Lily. "Please?" Lily took a deep breath. She could see the other diners trying not to stare, could feel the weight of this moment pressing down on her. But she had learned to be strong, to put her children first, to handle anything life threw at her. I have a meeting tomorrow morning at 9, she said carefully. After that, we can meet for coffee, somewhere public. Alexander nodded eagerly too quickly. He fumbled for a business card, nearly dropping it before placing it on the edge of their table. The children watched this exchange with wide eyes, their dinner temporarily forgotten. "Good night," he said softly, looking one last time at each child before backing away. The kids waved goodbye, already turning back to their coloring and games, but Lily knew this moment would change everything. After he left, she did what she'd learned to do over the past 5 years. She focused on her children. She helped them cut their food, listened to their stories about the airplane ride, and made sure everyone ate their vegetables. But her mind was racing, thinking about tomorrow's meeting, about the conversations that would need to happen, about the careful world she'd built, and how it might change. That night, in their hotel suite, as she tucked 4 sleepy children into their beds, one of them asked, "Mommy, was that man sad?" He looked sad. Lily kissed her daughter's forehead, buying time to find the right words. "Sometimes grown-ups have big feelings they don't know how to handle," she explained carefully. "But you don't need to worry about that. Mommy's got everything under control." As she sat in the darkness after they fell asleep, Lily looked at the business card Alexander had left. She knew tomorrow would bring questions she'd hoped to avoid for a few more years. But as she listened to her children's peaceful breathing, she felt stronger than ever. Whatever happened next, she would face it the same way she'd faced everything else, with grace, strength, and her children's best interests at heart. The morning after the restaurant encounter dawned gray and drizzly. Lily dropped her children at the hotel's childcare center, where they would spend the morning doing crafts under the watchful eye of experienced caretakers. Her mother was already on a train from Boston, rushing to help with the situation. The business meeting at the Thompson Hotel went by in a blur. Lily presented her designs professionally, but her mind kept drifting to the coffee shop, where she would meet Alexander in less than an hour. She arrived early, choosing a quiet corner table where she could see the door. Her hands wrapped around a cup of tea, seeking warmth and comfort. When Alexander walked in, he looked different from the night before, more composed, wearing an expensive suit that reminded her of their past life. "Thank you for meeting me," he said, sitting down. His lawyer arrived moments later, and Lily was glad she had the foresight to call her own attorney, who sat beside her with a notepad ready. "I want to be part of their lives," Alexander said without preamble. "They're my children too. I have rights." Lily took a steady breath. "Rights?" she asked quietly. "Like the right to walk away on our wedding day?" "The right to disappear completely." The meeting quickly turned into a discussion of legal terms and parental rights. Alexander's lawyer talked about DNA tests and custody arrangements. Lily's attorney countered with abandonment clauses and the children's best interests. "You've missed 5 years," Lily said, her voice firm. 5 years of midnight feedings, first steps, first words. 5 years of doctor's appointments, nightmares, and scraped knees. You can't just walk in now and demand a place in their lives. Alexander's face showed pain, but also determination. "I made a horrible mistake," he admitted. "I've regretted it every day since. When I saw them yesterday—" "They're beautiful, Lily. They're perfect. Please, give me a chance to make things right." Within days, papers were filed. The media caught wind of the story. Millionaire developer discovers secret quadruplets became headline news. Reporters camped outside their hotel, forcing Lily to move her children to a different location. The legal battle that followed was intense. Alexander's team argued that he had a right to know about the pregnancy, that keeping the children's existence from him was wrong. Lily's lawyers presented the abandonment note, the complete lack of contact, the stable life she'd built for her family. The children, thankfully, remained mostly sheltered from the drama. Lily made sure their routines stayed consistent, school via video chat with their teachers back home, playtime, stories before bed. But they were perceptive, noticing their mother's stress despite her efforts to hide it. "Why are there so many pictures of us in the newspaper?" one of them asked during breakfast. "Are we famous now?" Lily gathered them close, choosing her words carefully. "Sometimes grown-ups have disagreements that need to be solved by special people called judges," she explained. "But you don't need to worry about that. Your job is to be kids and have fun." The court proceedings revealed sides of Alexander she'd never known. He'd been in therapy for years, working through the fears that had made him run. He'd followed her career from afar, proud of her success, but too ashamed to reach out. When he spoke about seeing the children in the restaurant, his voice cracked with genuine emotion. But Lily stood firm. They need stability, she argued in court. They need someone they can count on. Running away when things get tough isn't an option when you're a parent. The judge listened carefully to both sides. The case wasn't just about legal rights, it was about the emotional well-being of 4 innocent children. Experts were called to testify about child development, about the impact of introducing an absent parent, about the delicate balance of their current family dynamic. Through it all, Lily maintained her dignity. She didn't speak ill of Alexander to the children, didn't let her anger show in public. She focused on protecting her family while remaining open to what was best for her children in the long run. Her design business partners stepped up again, handling projects so she could focus on the legal battle. Her parents became even more involved, providing a constant source of stability for the children. Friends from Boston sent care packages and messages of support. The media attention brought unexpected support too. Other single parents reached out with their stories. Her clients stood by her, impressed by her strength and professionalism in the face of such pressure. As the court case stretched on, Lily noticed subtle changes in Alexander. He stopped making demands and started asking questions about the children's personalities, their likes and dislikes, their daily routines. He began to understand that being a parent wasn't about rights, it was about responsibilities, about putting the children's needs first. One afternoon, during a court recess, he approached her with a different tone. "I was wrong," he said quietly. "Wrong to leave, wrong to demand instant access now. I need to earn my place in their lives, if you'll let me try." This moment marked a turning point in the case, leading to discussions that focused less on legal rights and more on what would truly benefit the children. The judge watched these developments closely, seeing how both parents handled the situation would influence his final decision. What no one knew yet was that this decision would surprise everyone involved, offering a solution that would test both parents' commitment to putting their children first. The next phase of their story would require more than just legal agreements. It would demand real growth, understanding, and the ability to put the past aside for the sake of 4 beautiful children who deserved nothing but the best from both their parents. The courthouse was quiet on the morning of the final hearing. Lily sat with perfect posture, but hands folded in her lap, while Alexander sat a few rows behind. Both waited for the judge's decision that would shape their children's future. The judge, a grandmother herself with 30 years of family court experience, looked at both parents thoughtfully before speaking. "This case has shown us that there are no perfect solutions," she began. "But there are paths forward that can benefit everyone, especially 4 young children who deserve all the love and support possible." Her ruling was unexpected but wise. Alexander wouldn't receive immediate custody rights. Instead, he would need to prove himself worthy of being in the children's lives through a gradual, supervised process. The judge outlined a detailed plan that would span several months. First, she explained, Mr. Alexander will attend parenting classes and family therapy. He needs to understand what these children have been through and what they need. Second, any interaction with the children will be supervised and guided by child development experts. Third, and most importantly, both parents must work together for the children's benefit. Lily felt tears of relief sliding down her cheeks. This was what she hoped for, not to keep the children from their father forever, but to ensure they were protected and supported through this massive change in their lives. The process began slowly. Alexander started with supervised visits at a family center where child psychologists helped him learn to interact with 4 energetic 5-year-olds. The children, naturally curious, had many questions. "Why haven't we met you before?" one asked during their first meeting. Alexander looked to the therapist for guidance, then answered honestly but simply, "I made a big mistake by not being here sooner, but I want to be part of your lives now, if you'll let me." Lily watched these interactions from a distance, noting how Alexander learned to tie shoes with patient fingers, how he listened intently to long, rambling stories about preschool adventures, how he never pushed when one of the children felt shy or uncertain. The therapy sessions helped them all adjust. The children learned it was okay to have complicated feelings about their father. Lily worked through her own emotions about co-parenting with the man who had once hurt her so deeply. Alexander confronted his fears about family and commitment, understanding finally what his actions had cost. Months passed and small changes began to show. The children started looking forward to their special playtime with their father. Alexander learned their individual personalities, which one loved dinosaurs, who needed extra hugs, who was the natural leader among the four. Lily's design business continued to thrive, and surprisingly, Alexander became one of her supporters. When a client questioned her ability to handle a major project while dealing with family court, Alexander personally vouched for her professionalism and skill. The media's interest eventually faded, replaced by newer scandals and stories. This gave their unusual family the space to grow at their own pace. Alexander proved himself not through grand gestures or expensive gifts, but through consistent presence and genuine effort. 1 year after the court decision, they had fallen into a workable routine. Alexander had earned the right to unsupervised visits, though he still checked in with Lily about important decisions. The children spent every other weekend at his new home, a family-friendly house he bought in Boston to be closer to them. "You've changed," Lily observed one afternoon, watching him help all 4 children with their science project. The man who had feared commitment now sat patiently on the floor, surrounded by glue and glitter, teaching their children about the solar system. "They changed me," he replied simply, helping their youngest daughter stick Neptune in its proper place. "I never knew I could love like this." The journey wasn't always smooth. There were disagreements about schedules, about discipline approaches, about holiday arrangements. But both parents have learned to handle these conflicts away from little ears, always putting the children's needs first. Lily's parents, who had been skeptical of Alexander's return, slowly warmed to him as they saw his genuine efforts. "He's trying," her father admitted. "That counts for something." The children bloomed under the love of their expanded family. They knew they could count on both parents to be there for school plays, doctor appointments, and bedtime stories. They had 2 homes where they felt safe and loved, 2 parents who put aside their past issues to focus on giving them the best future possible. On the children's 6th birthday, both parents hosted a joint party, something that would have seemed impossible a year earlier. Watching their 4 little ones blow out candles, surrounded by friends and family, Lily realized something profound. Sometimes the happy ending isn't what you initially dreamed of, but something better because it's real and earned. The story of the abandoned bride and the millionaire had transformed into something more meaningful, a story about growth, forgiveness, and putting children first. It wasn't perfect, but it was beautiful in its own way, like the family they had become. As the party wound down, one of the children asked, "Are we a normal family now?" Lily hugged her daughter close. "We're better than normal," she said. "We're exactly who we're supposed to be." And she was right. Their family might not look like others, but it was filled with more love, understanding, and wisdom than anyone could have predicted on that long-ago wedding day. They had all learned that sometimes life's biggest disappointments can lead to its greatest blessings if you're brave enough to keep your heart open to new possibilities.